A warm good evening to everyone. Today, we are going to have a seminar on PCOS on behalf of Organogenic Biotech and on behalf of Golden Jubilee Biotech for Women in association with PCOS Association and Srinivas Priya Hospitals. So, audience, can you guess what is PCOS? It is nothing but a problem for 1 in 10 women in India. Is that surprising? For me, it's shocking because India has more than 65% of age group of below 35. PCOS is nothing but polycystic ovarian syndrome. This September is an awareness month of PCOS. I would guess it will be more interesting if we have Janani to share about their organization, PCOS Foundation.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. So I am Janani from the foundation, from the organization PCOS Foundation. So this foundation was created initially to spread awareness of PCOS and to particularly provide the society with authentic information on PCOS. So we are a group of researchers, Dr. V. Usha and Dr. S. Rekha and myself. We started this around, in 2015. So Dr. Usha and Dr. Rekha are professors in SRM University, and every day they met a lot of students who are struggling from PCOS. And they mentor them to overcome all their physical and as well as psychological barriers, so that and also motivated them to perform well. So this they every year they had at least minimum 10 to 15 students who they had to counsel and mentor. So this actually provoked them, as well as they asked me, and we started taking a survey among the general population also for rural as well as the urban population of women. So we went around, we took survey, and nearly 10,000 members participated in the survey. And the survey was based on, the lifestyle factors, their food habits, the societal impact on their life, and the PCOS troubles or whatever they are facing through. And we collectively got to know that many rural women didn't come out to tell them that they're facing some issues, and urban population, we found out that they had a lot of misguided information of PCOS, mostly because from the Google platform. And so then we started an association which is known as PCOS Awareness Association of India, whose the sole purpose was to create awareness. So from that day onwards, we had started providing awareness programs. And for all these awareness programs, we should really thank Dr. Rajapriya Ayappan. She has been the honorary member of our PICOS site and has been the backbone and strength for all the awareness programs. She has come with us to all the rural areas of State to educate the men on PCOS and menstrual health. And in the course of this awareness process, we also found that not only awareness, something more was required for the women. They required a support system, a platform where they can, we can integrate both the clinical as well as the society and provide a platform as well as a support group to help the PCOS women understand what is it that they're really going through, and also to provide them, legitimate or authentic information on how to handle this. And so that is when then in this course of time, the PICOSI, or the PCOS Awareness Association of India, evolved into a PCOS Foundation, which is a holistic approach, where we will have many platforms, which is a platform for integrating the clinicians, scientists, as well as the general public. So from PCOS Foundation, we had another member that is Ms. Preeti was also a part of us. Should thank Preeti because she's been doing all the coordination as well as social media activities of PCOS Foundation. And so now we are working as a team over here, along with Rajapriya ma'am, who being a very busy clinician has made a point to involve all the societal activities and to provide as much education as possible to the women in India. So thank you, ma'am, really for this.
Thank you, ma'am.
And and more about PCOS Foundation is we have two activities based for the society. One is creating awareness We usually do it live. Now, due to the COVID situation, we are shifting to the online platform. And also, we do have management programs where it is a holistic program combining both the dietary information and also suggesting appropriate yoga practices. So we have our first batch already, which is going on, and they're 2 months into the program, and they're happy about it. And the other service which the PCOS Foundation provides is research. So in research, what we do is we closely work with clinicians. We try to understand where there's a lacunae and try to do research to come out with solutions, evidence-based solutions for any pitfalls they might face. Since PCOS is very dynamic, it differs from every woman, and a lot of guidelines are required to actually manage them. And the clinicians are also learning in their experience. So we do a lot of research in association with clinicians, both for the allopathy as well as the Indian system of medicine, to provide a solution to diagnosis and better treatment options. So in this pathway, we are also doing genomic research currently, which is supported by the Women Scientist Scheme and Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. So they have supported the genomics work, which will help us to identify the genetic pathology behind PCOS. So apart from this, also PCOS Foundation opens up internship opportunities for students who are willing to contribute their work to identifying more lacunae or filling up more lacunae in the PCOS field. And we hope the best from PCOS Foundation and more coordination. Thank you, Vaishnavi.
Thanks a lot, Janani. That was a splendid altruist performance by your institution, and the kind-hearted persons like you are. I mean, what do we own get an helping hand in the world? It's impossible. And you people are voluntarily involving in this kind of non-profitable organization and doing your fullest is the best ever seen performance and attitude from you great persons. Thanks a lot. And I would like to invite our today's speaker, Dr. Rajapriya Ayappan now. And now she is going to present our today's webinar session. So today we are going to see about PCOS. And I would like to give a brief introduction, but as far as her caliber is too big, and she's in a most prestigious position now. So without no delay, I would like to give a very short introduction. So she's a secretary in Indian Fertility Society, Tamil Nadu, and she has various publications and reputed journals too. And she has been actively participating in academic events and media. And she has achieved a wonderful awards and fellowship in various fields of medicines. I would like to give a virtual big applause to Dr. Rajapriya Ayappan now.
Thank you so much. So we go ahead with the evening's particular talk. Can we go ahead, Vaishnavi?
Yes, sure, ma'am. We are waiting for that.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much, Biotech Park, and big thanks to Janani, because I think I insisted that this particular program must happen. And September has always been a very dear month where we do a lot of PCOS activities. We used to go to schools and colleges and reach out to the corporation schools also and try to make them understand in whatever language possible, even in the regional language. Because PCOD today has crossed all boundaries, all socio-economic status platforms. It doesn't spare anyone, probably because of the metro lifestyle which we are into. So I thought we would just give a small 15 to 20 minute presentation on what this polycystic ovary syndrome is about and what are the long-term implications it can have in a woman's life. And then probably following that, we can have some questions where we can take up and answer whatever questions have already been put on the table by Janani. So first of all, polycystic ovaries has a huge history. See, I'm kind of 25 years ago, I finished my post-graduation where polycystic ovaries had a very small chapter in my textbook. But today there are books and books and journals and journals coming up with lots of different angles to polycystic ovaries, because the dermatologist has a viewpoint, the gynecologist has a viewpoint, the plastic surgeon has a viewpoint, the diabetologist has a viewpoint. So in a simple word, it's a chronic disorder, and it is characterized by many clinical features, hormonal disturbances, and ultrasound features. And the underlying thing which most of us doctors have understood is there is a component of insulin resistance and androgen excess. And as most of you understand, androgen is the male hormone. So if you have a male hormone excess in your body, you will have certain virilizing features, like more of skin related features like seborrheic skin and acne, dandruff, and also hirsutism or excessive male pattern of hair growth. And again, PCOD, not one person will have the same picture like the other person. It's a highly heterogeneous disorder. It is complex and multifactorial. And why genetic doctors from SRM have taken a great deal of interest in PCOD is because it's a polygenic disorder. And the various variations and phenotypes depends upon what type of genomic presentation is there. So end of the day, as I told you, different doctors look at it from different point. There's even a liver disease component to it. There is a component of excessive cholesterol in the body to it. So, and the worst thing is it can go up to affecting a woman's reproductive life. It can create infertility, and not mentioning in much later age, even cancer. So does PCOD have a permanent cure? Let's get it very clear. You take a lot of time to diagnose a girl with polycystic ovaries. And once you've made the diagnosis, it's polycystic ovaries, it's a permanent disease. So there is no cure. However, if you handle it appropriately, there is very good control possible. And as we just had the other Preeti telling us that this is as common as 1 in 10. And sometimes in certain populations, it's even 20 to 30%. And this is the commonest hormonal disease a person can have. And the difficult thing is it affects the woman between 12 to 45 years of age group. Now, as I was just saying, 25 years ago, we didn't have it that big a problem as we're having it today. So why has it become a millennium disease? Yes, you're genetically programmed inside your mother's womb itself. You were programmed that you may develop this problem. But when do you actually develop this problem? It is if you have an individual susceptibility, your environment is not conducive, then you manifest it. And once you manifest it, you will not have the same pattern through and through. There's a lot of variability within the individual over time. That's why it's such a challenge to diagnose and manage it. End of the day, whatever be it, everybody has clearly understood that only lifestyle change is the realistic way to approach and control the problem. This is a bit of a simple thing. This is a cut section of the uterus showing one fallopian tube and one ovary. And we all know that ovary is an endocrine organ within which the follicles grow, and a single follicle ruptures and releases the egg. Now, this egg is alive in the tube for a period of around 48 hours, where it is capable of getting impregnated by a sperm and a pregnancy results. Now, this whole particular thing is sabotaged when it comes to a girl with aggressive polycystic ovaries. The ovary has multiple small follicles, more than 15 to 20 number per ovary, and that appearance is called a polycystic ovary appearance. Like as you would see in this ultrasound picture, you have multiple small circles, and all these are follicles which are not growing but are arrested in development. Whereas if you take the normal girl, you will have a single follicle progressively growing in size wherein the egg would mature. So thereby she would get a regular period if she's not pregnant, or if she desires a pregnancy can happen. If you take the polycystic ovary, the ultrasound shows an enlarged ovary studded with small circles which are ungrown follicles. Ideally speaking, the best way to diagnose it is a vaginal scan. However, in an adolescent or in a person who has a virgin, the better route is the abdominal route. And especially, you know that PCOD, it's complicated by obesity, and it is a tough challenge at times to get, unless you have a very high quality resolution machine, to be able to see these features of polycystic ovaries. Now, adolescents, when do you actually earliest diagnose polycystic ovaries? Within 3 to 5 years of attaining the first period of menarche, you can diagnose polycystic ovary pattern in a particular woman, and say around 18 years or so, if you roughly take it as 13 years is when she attained the menarche, you will be able to diagnose polycystic ovaries. And what are the classical things we look for? Yeah, we look for irregular cycles, and that is called anovulatory menstrual cycle. As I just explained, you would find the small circles don't become bigger circles or follicles. So you have an anovulatory or a menstrual cycle where no egg production happens. Hence, you would see multifollicular scan ultrasound appearance, and that is termed as polycystic. The word cyst is normally a water-filled bubble. That's the meaning of a cyst. And you will find they would have lots of androgenic features. As I said, seborrheic hair, like you would have dandruff, you would have hair fall, you would have acne and a very oily skin. And they may also have a pattern of insulin resistance. This is a particular metabolic disturbance where they are prone for early onset of diabetes mellitus. Now, the axis maturation. Now, once a girl gets her first period, there are a good group of girls who start getting it every month on the dot. The cycles are very regular from the very beginning, but there are some girls who may take up to a year or so before the cycles start getting regular. But this particular paper came out with the fact that if a girl gets her period around less than 12 years, 50% of them should start getting regular ovulatory cycles by the time 1 year is over. And if someone gets it delayed, today, like most of the girls get their first menarche by the time they are 10 to 12 years old. Very few of them cross 13 years of age. So if somebody is crossing more than 13, 14 years of age, it may take up to 4 years for them to get their regular menstrual cycle. So whatever said and done, by the time they are 18 years of age, they should have regular cycles. If they have it irregular, then there is a high index of suspicion should be there to diagnose polycystic ovaries. At the same time, mark my words, just because they have irregular periods, you cannot put them under the banner, she has polycystic ovaries. You can't do that. Now, this particular article in Adolescence started exploring the different definitions for PCOD. From the year 1935, we are struggling to put PCOD under a definition. So that is the whole complex. People initially thought the disease was limited to the ovaries. Then they started understanding that a little bit of pancreatic organ or liver organ may be involved. Then they started involving more and more organs into the, even today, fat is seen as an organ which is generating polycystic ovarian disease. So you have another huge challenge which we follow, where we take an ultrasound report says polycystic ovaries, we jump and put the diagnosis polycystic ovaries. Here also a lot of caution should be taken before you make a diagnosis, because there are lots of ultrasound criteria to be fulfilled before we put the label as polycystic ovaries. Now, with this, we've always had the basic idea where nothing has changed, that if you have a genetic tendency, you're prone for PCOD. Yes, you're going to get PCOD, especially if you have bad dietary choices and put on a lot of body fat. That is typically obesity. With that comes environmental toxin exposure, weakened immune system, because PCOD is today seen as a low-grade inflammatory disease, and insulin resistance. So what are all the various stages in which you can catch? If PCOS is identified in a young girl, you're going to have an obese, hirsute young girl with acne, irregular periods, and she can have skin tags called acrochondrons, or she can have velvety black patches in her underarms called acanthosis nigricans. She can even have it in her neck area. You'll find black patches in the neck. And she may slowly, getting into the reproductive phase, as she turns 20 to 25 and she plans marriage, she can struggle with the problem of infertility. Much later, she can have all the metabolic sequelae. Metabolic means related to diabetes, hypertension, etc. Now, obesity is the key cornerstone, which has always been a hallmark of diagnosing obesity, irregular periods. Then always the clinician starts suspecting, yeah, this person may have polycystic ovaries. Now, how does it actually happen? I already told you that probably while you're in your mother's womb, intrauterine itself, you may be getting programmed. So that's a strong theory which was always there. Or maybe as she is in the pubertal phase, that is the phase before you get your first period, as you're preparing your body towards menarche and attaining puberty itself, if you are putting in a lot of fat, today you do see 10 to 12-year-old girls itself who are around 70, 65 kg of weight, which is very, very high body mass index. And that person is going to be vulnerable to developing PCOD because of an alteration of the whole endocrine axis. On the other hand, a very thin individual can also develop polycystic ovaries because the external fat may not be much, but the visceral fat means the fat which is accumulating within the body on the different organs like liver, etc., that can play a role also in giving a lean polycystic ovaries. So this is a very busy slide. I don't want you to put your head into too much of thought on this. You just have to understand that too many organs may involve. Just because you call it polycystic ovaries, it doesn't mean it's a disease of the ovaries. It can involve the various organs of the body into the disease spectrum. End of the day, the person can be obese, can have period irregularities, excessive bleeding, or I've had women who haven't even had a period for a year. Just, I think in the last 10 days, I've seen 2 women who have not got her period for 1 full year. And right now, anything you can blame it on COVID. Why didn't you come to the doctor? COVID, madam, I couldn't come out. So the worst situation I've had is where a woman didn't get a period for 5 years. So I treated her for infertility. She had a son. She was so busy with her son till the thought came she wants a second child. She did not come to the doctor. So when the son turned 5 years old, she came back. So those are all serious situations where I'm sure I cannot be of much help in giving her the second baby with that much of ease. So let's get it clear. Obesity, androgen hormone being excessive in the human body, and insulin, which is high level in the body, but not effective in the body. So there's a situation of hyperinsulin, but insulin resistance in the body. And this can create a lot of metabolism factors, which affects either the carbohydrate or the fat metabolism. So we just discussed that genetic people are in the scenario today because it's primarily a heritable factor, but there are non-heritable factors also. With respect to the hereditary genetic factors, we cannot change it. You have to live with those genes in your body. But the other non-heritable factors, you can always play with it and try to control the disease. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. But as far as polycystic ovaries, the best way forward is catch them young. Now, not allow the disease to get rooted and so deeply implanted in you, but play earlier. Now, today under research, we have come way forward where we started thinking that the gut microbiome, we all know that we have a lot of bacteria staying in our stomach, and we know that they live in harmony with us. So we believe that certain microbiome change can lead to a quick and aggressive presentation of polycystic ovaries. The circadian rhythm, the sleep pattern. Now, we are all as human beings programmed as to how many hours we sleep and whether the day-night influence puts us to sleep. The very atmosphere at time can induce sleep, and that's called the circadian rhythm. And we all know the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone, these two hormones are secreted with respect to the brain, and this controls the ovary so that you get your menstrual cycles. So we believe that small changes in these hormones with respect to their genotypes can affect, again, present as PCOD. And above all, epigenetic changes brought about by the various environmental pollutants. Now, the gut microbiome, we all know that curd has a lot of lactobacilli in it, so they're called prebiotics. And this is a new factor. I just want to bring to light that it is important for us to focus on what we eat, because what we eat will decide what bacteria stays alive in our stomach, and that can play a huge role on what kind of clinical parameters of PCOD we are manifesting. And the other important thing is for us to understand that there's a hormone called melatonin, and this hormone is secreted by a pineal gland, and this acts like the pacemaker in our 24-hour day schedule, where 12 hours most of us are active and awake, and 12 hours we're kind of on the low profile. Usually at least 8 hours of sleep is what we are recommended to sleep. But I'm sure a great deal of youngsters today are so logged on the whole night, they could stay awake very comfortably playing around with their gadgets. So there's a lot of excessive daytime sleepiness. And I think COVID aggravated this behavior in a lot of youngsters. They were all locked in their houses for 3 months. They didn't know what to do. So it's staying awake the whole night, watching and catching up with Netflix and sleeping the whole day. End of the day, they would just not be happy that they slept enough at all. So they want to sleep more and more, and it's not good quality sleep. And PCOD gets worse. That's what I was trying to say. And thanks to the drive which the government had, we did a lot of work on banning plastic last year and shifting towards consuming water from either earthenware or glassware or steelware. So that was a good trend because very clearly research has showed that endocrine disrupting chemicals found in plastic, particularly bisphenol A, can get PCOD to be worse. So even skincare products, what you smear on your face to look a bit better, more beautiful, that can penetrate into your system and create harm in your endocrine harmony. So with this, I think all of you would have got it very clear that if you want to control PCOD or prevent the complications of PCOD, all that you have to do is correct the nutrient deficiencies you have, whether it's a micronutrient, which is usually about vitamins and minerals, or macronutrients. Macronutrients, we talk about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And when it comes to dairy, it's better to cut dairy and eat more omega-3 fatty acids. And when it comes to exercise, no point in doing like a binge exercise, do 2-3 days and then laser on the next 4 days. It has to be of a good quality of time and a regular basis. And we all keep talking about stress and de-stress, and I can't emphasize better saying that, yes, it is important to de-stress to come out of all the negative health issues we have. And I'm talking here about emotional health as well and quality of sleep as well, and eliminating toxin exposures, whether it is in the form of water, air, or in the food. Now let's see, one thing is clear, you want to look good, you are what you eat. So eating nutrient dense food, low calorie and anti-inflammatory diet is so important. And saying bye-bye to Swiggy is even more important. So let's come slowly away from fast and processed food and shift more to natural based diet. And with respect to micronutrients, the human body needs vitamin B12, needs vitamin D and magnesium. And if you take, most of this comes through seeds, through greens, through the dry fruits or nuts we consume, and avocados. And particularly even meat, they say meat is good. The non-vegetarian food is good. If you are getting grass-fed lamb, most of the time you know that in a quick process of a broiler chicken, the kind of food, the meat, those farm animals are consuming, you cannot be sure it's going to be good enough for you when you consume them. With respect to the macronutrients, there's no point in eating food if you're not getting the nutrition out of that food. Sometimes when you're taking high volume of carbohydrates, say like wheat-based food, it has particular phytic acid rich in it. And when there's lots of phytate in your food, and at the same time you're taking a nutrient, the nutrient will not get absorbed. So it's important for us to understand how we are mixing the different food and taking it so that you're able to absorb all the nutrients properly. And there's something called cruciferous vegetables, which are important to detoxify our body. And some common thing which we get in our market is broccoli and cauliflower. The broccoli is more like the green cauliflower. It's said to be good because it detoxes our body pretty well. And I already told you, more than taking dairy, like if you choose between milk and yogurt, the better product for you to go for will be the yogurt, because this is more friendly to the gut rather than the pure condensed milk per se. Now, omega-3 fatty acids, if you're a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian, you should know that walnuts, chia, and flax is a good option for the vegetarians, whereas the fish and egg yolks are a better option for the non-vegetarians. And it's omega fatty acids, the good fatty acids are essential for controlling PCOS. So what are these glycosylated end products, advanced glycosylated end products? When you're having a high temperature cooking, or say you're frying a food, you're literally charring the food and consuming it, you're generating a lot of AGE. And this is said to cause a lot of diet-related diseases, whether it is acidity or ulcer or even PCOD. So frying and grilling and roasting, you have to understand you're completely changing the natural composition of the food item and consuming it. It is better to take it in less quantity or try to avoid it because it increases the oxidative stress in your body. And any kind of oxidative stress in the body would lead to slow inflammatory damage of the body. And I already said, exercise is something which you should love and do. You can't feel that you're going through a punishment and doing exercise. So it's better for you to start doing something you really enjoy doing. Maybe it's a Zumba, or you like film songs, you like to just play them and dance to the beat for 15 to 20 minutes. Yes, it's fantastic. You like swimming, you like outdoor activities, whatever. If it's yoga, you have to involve yourself in power yoga because the aim is not only mind calm, but also to burn calories. So I think the key is regular habits. Or you have to, why I'm saying this is the routine person does 20 to 30 minutes of exercise, you'll find that there's going to be some form of benefit. There will be weight loss. But for the PCOD person who has grabbed 100 to 120 kg of weight, it is such a challenge to lose weight. Now, why is this so? Because the PCOD body fat which is accumulated, it's not because of a caloric imbalance. It's because of a complex hormonal imbalance. Because in a caloric imbalance, you can overcome the positive and negative calorie. Like you eat less and you burn more fat. Yeah, there's some going to be a productive exercise. But here it is such a challenge for them. They would sincerely put in 1 hour, 2 hours of exercise for a very meager amount of weight loss. The best thing is don't grab weight. The minute you're going out of bound, like the minute you touch 65, 70 kg, wake up. Because it's easier handled when you are at a lower weight balance. And this is a self-explanatory picture where most of us try to find out how to do weight loss, but we would never be able to do it as long as our attitude and love towards food continues. And the optimal BMI with respect to the Indian is actually much lesser. They say 18 to 23 is the Indian BMI standards, and 19 to 25 is more of the European standards of body mass index. And body mass index is a simple thing. It's like how much of weight you should be if you are of this height. Say, for instance, if you're 5 feet high, then probably you can only be around 45 kg of weight. And that way, your BMI will fall into the numbers between 18 to 23. Now, we do understand that the body fat sometimes is more of the upper abdomen fat. In certain cases, it's more of the lower abdomen and related to the thigh. You can have a bigger hip. So the waist-hip ratio is something, again, of key importance to deciding whether you can develop metabolic complications. And what are all these metabolic complications we're talking about? We're talking about high cholesterol or dyslipidemia. We're talking about diabetes, hypertension, liver disease, and heart disease. Trust me, it just doesn't talk, PCOD is just not about irregular periods or difficulty in having a baby or a reproductive infertility situation. It is about mood disorders. These young girls with overweight, suffering with the body hair and acne, and going from pillar to post trying to find a cure for PCOD, at a point going for mood disorders, mental health disorders, depression. And it's sad that they really need a lot of counseling. And I'm glad that Janani's team is out there trying to sit and talk to these young girls and tell them that they are not alone. There are a lot of people. And that's why all over the world, the entire month of September is devoted towards PCOS awareness, where each and every health worker tries to play their part in alleviating this particular sorrow. Now, if you see what are the agents which are there medically available, I just talked about lifestyle changes. With respect to medication to bring good control for polycystic ovary disease was one of the insulin sensitizers called metformin. This was used very widely used, I should say, 2-3 years ago. Now, very clearly, evidence has said just because you use insulin sensitizers, you cannot cure or remove the disease pattern. So it is sensible to select the right candidate for introducing metformin. And once you have decided to use metformin, you also have to remember you have to have a tab on whether it is giving them any side effects. So you cannot use the drug blindly or cannot use it long term. You need to have some scientific logic to use it. And it is important for us, once we diagnose polycystic ovaries, to keep them under annual follow-up so you can identify those who are potentially prone for developing the metabolic syndrome. That is, complications beyond the hormonal pattern going into hypertension and diabetes. Now, how would you pick up a young polycystic ovary girl who is vulnerable for metabolic syndrome? Of this various 5 criteria listed, they should have at least 3 out of 5 criteria. Then we say they are prone for metabolic syndrome. What are they? Like if their blood glucose is more than 100, like they are prone for diabetes probably. If their blood pressure is more than 90th centile, or roughly say more than 130, 90, then probably they're prone. If their fats, like the high density lipoprotein is supposed to be high, but if it is less than 40, then they are in for trouble. The triglycerides, if they're more than 110, then they are in for trouble. And their waist circumference should ideally be not more than 95 centimeters. So if it's more than the 90th centile for that age group, then you have to be in caution. And because of the obesity per se, some of them are prone for obstructive sleep apnea. They tend to snore and they can go for apneic spells during their sleep. Now, I just been again and again going through the same thing. By having PCOD, you can have so much of negative health consequences. So let's start looking at it beyond obesity and irregular periods. Let's start looking at it that it can create havoc at every stage of a woman's life. And it is important for us to help them to understand you are prone for probably all of this. So please go to the doctor once a year. Do the necessary tests. Like we do have tests, like you want to check for diabetes, you're going to check blood sugar. You're checking for hypertension, you're checking the blood pressure. To know about the fat levels, you're going to do the cholesterol level in the body. And to see whether the hormonal pattern is going in the right line, we're going to do hormonal test. To see if the uterus can develop cancer, we will do an ultrasound and we will try and measure the endometrial thickening to see the risk for cancer, especially for those who don't get period for a period of 6 months. So as I told you, we had a lot of women who said, I didn't get my period since last October 2019. And because of the COVID, usually I get it once in 3 months. I thought I would wait, but the wait became longer, doctor. It has now almost become 8-9 months. So you have to understand these women have to go through a scan. Giving another period is no big task. You're going to give a couple of hormonal pills. She's going to get her period. But what is happening in the uterus all these months when she didn't get the period is important. So we protect her from the risk of getting an endometrial cancer. Trust me, to bring a change in all these long-term complications which they can go for, she just needs to lose around 10% of her weight. Say she's around 90 kg in weight and she's going through some of these risk factors. She comes down to 81 kg. There will be a tremendous improvement in all her risk factors. So that's exactly what we are targeting. So I would like to conclude this evening's presentation on PCOD and its long-term implications, saying a nutritious, balanced, calorie-conscious diet, a regular physical activity which you actually enjoying doing for a good length of time, at least 30 to 45 minutes, adequate emotional rest and quality sleep. Now, that's all that you need to do. Eat, drink, and be merry, I would say, right? Keep your health protected. And these simple changes like moving more and educating the young girl that not accumulate a lot of weight and then struggle with it, and lower the environmental toxin burden, like quitting from plastic, saying bye-bye to Swiggy, and then incorporating some physical activity she likes. It can have a huge health impact for her future. So as clinicians, as health workers who are taking an effort to help these polycystic ovaries affected child or woman, we have to be sensitive and we have to be sensitizing them that whatever problem they came for, we have to even work on beyond that and make them understand and see where they are placed. And before we diagnose, just because she is obese, has irregular periods, we can't put her, you have polycystic ovaries. Just because the scan report says polycystic ovaries, we cannot label her as PCOD. We have to diagnose it with caution. So how do we do it? A proper history taking, looking at a proper lab panel of tests, and by doing a good quality ultrasound, we can come to the diagnosis. So if we decide to introduce medications to correct this, as I told you, it is only lifestyle concrete changes which brings the control of the disease. If we decide to use medications, it's only essential medications, short-term medications, and minimum medications to be used. We cannot abuse medications and suffer from the side effects. That's important. And we have to keep them under long-term regular follow-up, at least an annual follow-up, and make them understand that body mass index is not about a particular weight. It's about what weight you are, or if you are at a particular height. So I must say, thank each and every one of you who have logged on to this presentation. I thank you for your time. And I'm so happy that in spite of us not being able to meet each other in person, we've been able to use this virtual opportunity and educate to you all whatever best we can that polycystic ovaries is not that bad after all. If you connect with your own mind, body, and soul, put yourself together and decide, I'm going to work on weight loss. If it is in my hands, the treatment is more in my hands than in the doctor's hands, why can't I bring about the change? Yes, it's possible. We are here for you to guide you and help you reach your goal. Thank you so much to PCOS Society Foundation and to all those who have made this evening possible.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, we need to thank from our Organogenic for giving us an opportunity to join PCOS Foundation. And today's your seminar. It's very cognitive and it's an awareness spreading webinar that I have ever joined. So public awareness of PCOS is very essential because over half of the 1 crore people that have it are unaware of it. So it helps more people that are informed of PCOS, the better chances for early diagnosis. Thanks a lot. And audience, now we will be going for a questioner session in our webinar. So please post your questions that you would like to ask ma'am in the chat box so that we will be answering you. We'll be having very short questioner session as we are short of our time. So let me ask a generic question, ma'am. Some of our audience, like, when should I consult a doctor for diagnosis for PCOS? Because people are not aware of it, because even all adolescent age people, after attaining their age, even their parents are not aware of it. Then how come a teenage girl can be aware of that? So
Okay.
how?
Okay, the first thing which we discussed today is understand MENARCH. MENARCH means when did you get your first period in your entire life? Say as a 13-year-old, you got your first period. Then the best sensible thing is at least wait for 3 years before you go to the doctor. Even if you're not getting periods or you're getting irregular periods, don't worry for the first 3 years post MENARCH. Say then you become 16 years old. And then you start plotting a menstrual cycle chart. That means you start watching how often you get your period. Say you're starting at January 2020, you got a period, you note it down. Then you're getting it once again on March 15th, you note it down. Then you're not getting anything until say September 19th, you note it down. So once you've got it for the tracked back for the last 6 to 8 months, you go and meet your routine family gynecologist and tell her that in the last 9 months, I got only 3 periods, right? So that's how you go about it. You need to have knowledge about your first period. You need to have a knowledge when your period became erratic, and you need to have a chart rewinding the last 6 to 8 months. Now, once this happens, it becomes very, very easy. Like if you haven't had even 8 periods in a year, say 3 to 5 years after your first period in your lifetime, there's a very, very, very high suspicion that you're having polycystic ovaries, which the doctor would add on with blood tests and an ultrasound and diagnose. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So next question is like, people, some of the girls are getting the period for 2 or 3 days, not like 5 or 9 days like other girls do. So what if that, is that a case of PCOS, or it depends on their body condition?
Yeah, right. Now, if you're getting your period flow from 2 to 3 days to 5 to 6 days, it is okay. It is like a person sweating. Some person, if you're having 10 women inside a room, some of them sweat very badly, some of them don't sweat much, some of them practically will not even drop one sweat at all. So period flow is like that. 2 to 3 days is also normal. 6 days is also normal. So you have a range. However, if you're not even having 2 pads getting wet in a given day and hardly 2 days, that is of concern. Similarly, if you're bleeding more than a week, more than 5-6 pads clots every day, again, that is of concern. If you're in between and you have your own pattern, which is the same, you know your pattern, you know that you always use 5 to 6 pads every cycle, then it is good. Similarly, what is the cycle gap? You need to have between one period onset and the next period onset, a gap of anywhere from 28 to 35 days. It's okay. You don't have to get it exactly 1st of every month. Say you got it on 1st of September, it is okay if you get it 5 days before or 5 days delayed up to 5th October, the next cycle. So that's how it works.
That's great. So is laparoscopic drilling necessary at the age of 20 years?
Not at all. See, initially, I would say 15 years, 20 years ago, we were very excited that laparoscopic ovarian drilling is a very promising treatment for polycystic ovaries. But that treatment is strictly only for those women who are trying to have a baby, not other than that. Okay. Now, today we have our reservations. We have understood more and more about the disease with every passing year. So today, polycystic ovarian drilling is only done for that group of women who are trying very hard to fall pregnant, and maybe the doctor has clear-cut criteria to do the procedure. Then she would do it in a particular small group of people who are infertile. It has no role for anybody who's 20-year-old or who doesn't look at a baby at all at that point of their life.
Thank you, ma'am. And yeah, our next question is, can I take oral contraceptive pill without doctor's advice?
No, I think it is not right. So I do understand oral contraceptive pill, which is normally used, contraceptive, the very word says like you're trying to prevent a baby by taking the oral contraceptive pill. But this same oral contraceptive pill is widely used by us as clinicians for young girls who are having polycystic ovaries. But here the purpose is a non-contraceptive benefit. That means we are not using it as a contraceptive in that girl. We are using it in that girl to regularize periods, bring a balance of the androgen excess hormone. We just discussed that here between the estrogen, the female hormone, and androgen, the male hormone, there is an imbalance. So what we are trying to do here is to set that balance right. That is the whole aim of introducing the oral contraceptive. It is strictly to be used only with the doctor's guidance, and that too for a short time, not more than 3 to 6 months.
Okay. And we have a question from Kavita. Ma'am, what is the reason for hair fall during or after adolescence? How can we get rid from it?
Okay, now if hair fall is because of polycystic ovaries, then it is something I told you, you're programmed. That is because you're having a hormonal imbalance. So you need to be tackling the hormonal imbalance, because if you take the male person has a tendency towards baldness, right? Men have a different type of hairline unlike the female. So it's because of hormonal imbalance, you're having a hair loss, then you need to be correcting the hormonal imbalance. But if you're not having polycystic ovaries, other than that, the commonest reason for hair fall could be anemia. That is, you have a low hemoglobin or a reduced blood component in your body. Then you have to correct the hemoglobin levels. Your hair fall will come into control. But with respect to polycystic ovaries, hair fall is worsened besides the male hormone imbalance because you're prone for dandruff. And we all know that dandruff per se, seborrheic dermatitis per se, can lead to hair fall. So you have to correct the underlying factors.
Yeah.
So you correct the dandruff, you correct the hemoglobin, you correct the male hormone excess, you bring the hair loss to control.
Yeah. Hope that answers your question, Kavita. And next question we have is, how to treat PCOS in terms of diet and lifestyle? As you have already told,
yeah,
but
we spoke a lot
very
about
hard
it.
to maintain. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
hard
yeah.
to maintain.
Absolutely. I always tell the young girls who come, they'll ask, "Enna saapano, doctor? Give me a diet plan." I said, no, I'm not giving you a diet plan, because it is very, very difficult for you to follow a diet plan. Because if you start following it, you can do it for a period of 1 month, maybe. But what happens after 1 month? You would again go back to square one and regain the weight. So the best thing is what I gave in my concluding slide. You draft in your lifestyle what your mother's kitchen is doing. Go for a low glycemic diet, a balanced diet. Now that's what will work. So just work around 1,200 calories or so, not more than that. And then make sure you're aware of the calorie of everything you pop into your mouth. You're popping in an apple into your mouth, you find out, Google search and find out how many calories it is. So you would automatically know, oh God, you would do on your treadmill, you've done around 30 minutes and you would have found you would have lost 150 calories. The minute you pop in one small chocolate, 150 calories goes in. So equalized, you're doomed. That way, you would know what to eat and what not to eat. So I always tell my patient, the wrong food at the wrong time in the wrong quantity. Just ask yourself the 3 wrongs. Wrong food, wrong time, wrong quantity. That's it.
I mean, adolescents
It'll work.
between 15 to not 15, like 20 to 30 years are prone to this kind of wrong life cycle of
Yeah. So just correct the 3 wrongs, it should work. And then get realistic. There's no point in you Google searching Atkins diet. Okay, I'm going to go on this diet. But can you do it for the rest of your life? Because PCOD, we just said, it's a permanent chronic disorder. So if there is a short-term disorder, yeah, you can do a short-term diet. You have to do what works for you for the rest of your life.
Ma'am, we have another question. During periods, do we need to bother with the color of the blood? Because sometimes the color is not normal. Is that related to PCOS?
No, it's not related to PCOS per se. Now, unless you're having say, as I told you, you haven't got a period for 5-6 months. So you've got a lot of old period collected. So at the end of 6 months, if your doctor is going to give you a tablet and make you get your period, that will have altered blood in it. So that will be different from your routine flow. So I wouldn't say it's related to PCOD per se. It depends upon what activity has been happening within. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess even I have access to the questions. If we control PCOD, will the hirsutism disappear? Right? That's the next
Don't
one.
pick up my job, ma'am.
Okay, come
You're
on.
already doing your presentation
Shoot.
very well.
Shoot.
No, ma'am. That's what question from Yamini. If we control PCOS, will the hirsutism disappear?
No. The hirsutism is one of the most challenging things to handle in PCOD, which is excessive hair growth. We have to understand that since it's it is rooted there in your body, it is ideal to have some amount of hormonal treatment, bring the androgen hormone to control, and then go to a cosmetologist. After you've controlled the hormone, you go to the cosmetologist. The cosmetologist would probably suggest some long-term treatments, like a laser treatment for controlling the hirsutism. It works good. So it's a combination of treatment between the gynecologist and the cosmetologist. Supposing you say, I can't spend thousands and thousands of rupees on a good quality laser treatment for hirsutism, then the simple thing, you always have the beauty parlor, which will offer a waxing or a threading and learn to live life. Or you can always weed yourself at home. No other go. That hirsutism will never disappear. I'm really sorry to say that.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Percentage of chances of recurrence of disease by Shapa?
Yeah. See, let's again and again try to reach out to all those who are tuned in with us today that polycystic ovaries is a disease which is permanent. It has moments where it's exacerbation, where it can be full blown and troubling you a lot, or it can be quiet in control, like a puppy dog staying quiet. And then suddenly you'll find it will spring up and bark at you. You never know when it is going to come back. Yes, if you are always conscious about whatever we told, like the triad, good quality sleep, regular exercise, very, very calorie conscious, you're having the perfect caloric balance in you, you're at the perfect body mass index, yes, you're not going to have much of presentation of the disease. You can keep the disease in quiescence. I've had some really motivated women who have kept the disease in very good control. Like once they have understood it, and it is again catch them young. If you've caught the particular person between 15 to 20 years of age and inculcated into their brains, then they really keep the disease in quiescence. And the environmental pollutants also, I told you, staying away from plastic and things like that, your percentage of recurrence is very low.
Yeah, I guess that kind of guidance should be given to all teenagers from a motherhood, so that they will continue their
absolutely. But I know all teenagers hate their mothers in their teenage. They love their mothers after they are 25 to 30 years of age. So that's the difficult part. Yeah, we can have it as a separate topic by itself. Why do teens hate their mothers?
More teenagers will not participate in the webinar.
Okay.
So, ma'am, why lean people get PCOS?
See, it's not like that. Why lean people get PCOS? They're already genetically programmed to get the PCOD. You should ask Janani what kind of crazy genotype they have in them. But we have always related the disease to fat as an endocrine organ. And that's why we said they have more of visceral fat, a lot of liver, pancreas related fat. And that's what is giving the trouble. But lean PCOS is a smaller group. They only around 30 to 40%. Almost 50 to 70% of them are only the obese PCO type. But the organ of trouble is different. The organ of trouble is hyperinsulinemia and androgen excess. That's the underlying thing, whether they are fat or lean.
Good. And Duration of PCOD treatment by Dr. Shabana.
So usually when a person, as I told you, say I'm getting a girl who is around 80 kg of weight, she's not got her periods the last 6 months, and she's already troubled by her mother telling her she's lazy, she doesn't do any work, she doesn't even move a book by an inch, then I know that she's already got a little bit of mental health issues. She's a stubborn patient. So I have to put an agenda with her. You're at this weight over a period of 6 months is our treatment period. And this 6 months, we're going to work on your irregular cycles. We're going to work on your weight loss. If you show me weight loss, I will start reducing your tablets. That's how the agreement be. But if it is skin changes with respect to hair loss or an oily skin or very bad acne, then we have to link up with the cosmetologist as well, where the treatment schedule may be anywhere for 6 months to 8 months also. So the whole thing is depending on what problem they present with, but a minimum time period of 6 months to 8 months will be there to address it. Now, supposing if it is somebody who's married 4 years and doesn't have a child, infertility is their problem and they come to us, then the treatment schedule will be from 6 months to 1 year. To bring the problem to control, it will take 3 to 6 months for me. And then I have to work on them to help them get a baby, which will be another 6 months. I mean, that's a realistic goal. No, you can't express it like an app and press the app on the smartphone and expect everything to become like a miracle around you. It's human body. It takes time.
Yeah. Infertility can't be caused by PCOS, you know?
100%, darling, it will be caused. The commonest cause of infertility today in our own country is PCOD. It is a chunk of 30 to 40% of our daily patients.
Oh my God.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. See, as adolescents, you're very, very happy if you don't get your period. Oh, why run around with a sanitary pad and have pain? That's a very happy moment. But it can wreak havoc as the life unfolds in front of you. So you're happy at 15 years of age, but I'm talking to you about 45 years of age, no? If the disease goes uncontrolled. And that's the whole idea of sitting and catching all of you and talking on the Saturday evening when you can have loads of fun.
Yeah, party night. Okay. Yeah. Ma'am, when we are talking about 45 age, will this PCOS get stopped after menopause period?
See, usually with menopause, obviously your estrogen and androgen is going to quieten. But already you would have had the long-term implications. If you've not taken care of the disease, you're going to have hypertension, you're going to have diabetes, you're going to have heart disease, you're going to have uterine cancer. That is something you have to face and deal with. So the ovarian component will quieten. But respect to the other metabolic derangements, they are there. So that's why it's a continuous exercise. The annual follow-up, making sure all this has set into the human body is important.
Yes, ma'am. So I guess we have come to an end of our webinar session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your patience and giving a wonderful answers to all. And it's been like very interactive session. Moreover, I enjoyed the session too good.
I too enjoyed it, Preeti. Okay. I just hope that we have more programs like this and we're able to reach out to more young girls and college students, because I think for your own self, you thought infertility was not a problem. For your own self, you thought, I'm not going to get diabetes or hypertension. But the sad thing is, yes, at 25 to 27 years, so many of my PCOD patients have had all what I talked about today, right? So I think it's our job through this PCOS Foundation to go around and keep educating young girls, saying, but the treatment is not at all in our hands. You eat right, you stay fit, you sleep good, you are enjoying a good lifestyle, you are away from the negative effects of the disease. Okay?
Of all disease, actually.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you so much to each and every one of you.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have come to an end of this session, guys. I request the participant to kindly fill the feedback form, which will be available till 12 o'clock today. And I thank Dr. Rajapriya Ayyappan, ma'am, for giving us a cognitive and informative webinar. I would like to thank Dr. D. Sudhakaran, GM of Golden Jubilee Biotech Park for Women's Society, for his support, and Dr. Shamni for making this session possible. And I thank our mentor, Dr. Ganesh Mani, for being extremely supportive for each and every session conducted by Organogenic. Big thanks to all and participants, and hoping your presence in the upcoming sessions too. And I'll be hoping to have a webinar with ma'am another webinar maybe, and
Sure.
enjoyable webinar. Thank you so much, ma'am. And last but not least, thank you so much, audience, for your support. Thanks a lot.